Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a story that's a cornerstone of American history, a tale of courage, desperation, and a journey that would change the world forever. We're talking about the Mayflower. Now, you've probably heard the name. The Mayflower, 1620, Pilgrims, Plymouth Rock. It all sounds familiar, right? But the real story is so much more dramatic and complex than the simple version we learn in school. This wasn't just a pleasure cruise. It was a high-stakes gamble for a new life. So, who were these people we call the Pilgrims? They were actually two distinct groups. First, you had the Separatists. These were people from a small English village who had a major problem with the Church of England. They believed it was still too much like the Catholic Church and wanted to completely break away, or separate, to practice their faith in a purer way. This was a dangerous idea back then. The king was the head of the church, so challenging the church was like challenging the king himself. They faced persecution, fines, and even prison. Desperate, they first fled to the Netherlands, a place known for its religious tolerance. They lived there for about a decade, but it wasn't the perfect solution. They found it hard to find good jobs, and they worried their children were losing their English identity and becoming too Dutch. They needed a new plan, a place where they could be English, be free to practice their religion, and build their own community from the ground up. Their eyes turned to the New World, America. But a transatlantic voyage was incredibly expensive. This is where the second group comes in. The strangers, as the Separatists called them. These were merchants, craftsmen, and families who weren't motivated by religion. They were sponsored by English investors and were heading to America for economic opportunity, to make a new living, or simply for adventure. The investors chartered a ship and agreed to finance the Separatists' journey in exchange for a share of the profits the new colony would generate. So, you have these two very different groups, with different motivations, crammed onto one relatively small cargo ship, the Mayflower. It wasn't a passenger ship. It was a smelly, cramped, wine-trading vessel. Imagine around 102 passengers, plus about 30 crew members, living below deck for months. There was no privacy, no fresh air, and the conditions were grim. Their journey was a nightmare from the start. They originally had two ships, the Mayflower and the Speedwell, but the Speedwell kept leaking and had to be abandoned. This forced everyone onto the already crowded Mayflower and caused significant delays. They ended up leaving England in September, much later than planned, meaning they would face the brutal North Atlantic during storm season. The voyage itself was 66 long, treacherous days. They were battered by fierce storms. One powerful wave cracked a main beam of the ship, and for a moment it looked like they might not make it. They managed a makeshift repair using a large iron screw they happened to have on board. People were constantly seasick. They lived on a monotonous diet of hardtack biscuit, salted beef, and beer. And tragically, one passenger and one crew member died during the crossing. But, in a sign of new beginnings, a baby was also born, aptly named Oceanus. Finally, on November 9, 1620, they spotted land. But it wasn't their intended destination in Virginia. The storms had blown them far north to Cape Cod, in what is now Massachusetts. Winter was setting in fast. Tensions were high. Some of the strangers argued that since they weren't in Virginia, the rules of their original charter didn't apply. They claimed they could do whatever they wanted. Recognizing the danger of chaos and rebellion, the leaders knew they needed to establish order before anyone even set foot on shore. This led to one of the most significant moments of the entire journey. The writing of the Mayflower Compact. 41 of the men gathered and signed this short document. It was a revolutionary agreement for its time. They pledged to create a civil body politic, to create just and equal laws for the general good of the colony, and promised to abide by those laws. It was a foundational act of self-governance, a promise to work together for survival. After exploring the coast, they chose a site for their settlement, which they named Plymouth. But their ordeal was far from over. That first winter was devastatingly brutal. They were unprepared for the harsh New England cold. Sickness, including scurvy, swept through the colony. By the spring, nearly half of the original passengers had died. Their survival was largely thanks to the help of the local Wampanoag people, particularly an English-speaking man named Squanto. He taught them how to plant corn, where to fish, and how to survive in this new land. This alliance led to a successful harvest in the autumn of 1621, which they celebrated with a 3-day feast, sharing their bounty with their Wampanoag allies. This event is what we now remember as the first Thanksgiving. The story of the Mayflower is a powerful reminder of the risks people will take for freedom and a new beginning. It's a story of perseverance against incredible odds, and the birth of a community built on a promise of self-rule. It laid a crucial foundation for the nation that would one day become the United States. What do you find most fascinating about the Mayflower journey? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next adventure. See you next time.